Japanese role-playing games. They have shaped consoles and generations of gamers alike. They've allowed us to get immersed in worlds never before seen anywhere for decades. They've been at the forefront of the gaming industry and at times more obscure and niche. They are my favorite genre in gaming, and they've shaped not just the gamer I am, but also the person I am today. Even though the last few years haven't been the kindest to the genre, mainly due to the rise of Western RPGs, photorealistic graphics, and mobile games, both the number and quality of JRPGs have significantly decreased, and that's a shame. In response to this, I would like to express my undeniable love for JRPGs. So surprisingly, the role-playing game genre in Japan actually started in personal computers in the early 80s. Early JRPGs were heavily inspired by the Wizardry series and Japanese visual novel adventures being developed by companies like Enix, Square, and Koei. Despite there being some games started as RPGs early on, like Koei's Underground Exploration, these could barely be called role-playing games. The first actual JRPG is Koei's The Dragon and Princess in 1982, featuring adventure game elements and revolving around rescuing a kidnapped princess, something that will become a staple of the genre. The genre will really take off when it arrived on consoles, especially with the release of probably the most important JRPG of all time, Dragon Quest in 1986, which would become the template for future JRPGs. Designer Yuji Ori's intention behind Dragon Quest was to create a role-playing game that appealed to a wider audience unfamiliar with the genre. This required the creation of a new kind of RPG that didn't rely on previous D&D experience, that didn't require hundreds of hours of road fighting, and that could appeal to any kind of gamer. But to me, the most important aspect of JRPGs, the one that differentiates it from Western RPGs, also started here. Its undeniable connection to anime. This could be seen in its coming-of-age tale, the damsel in distress storyline, the romance element, and the most telling aspect, the anime-style art by Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball. This relationship JRPGs have with anime started here, and will only become more and more integral to the RPG genre moving forward. This is my favorite aspect of JRPGs. You can make anything a possibility in animation, any type of world you can dream of without any constraint. Anything the mind can conjure, no matter how big or weird, can be made in animation. This is a key difference Eastern animation has from Western animation. Western animation is more reluctant to make animation for more mature audiences, or anything that's too weird or too mature won't sell. When they allow something weird or mature, they tend to be constrained by budget, just in case they do fail. Animation is still very kid-oriented in the West, and that holds it back a little, even though that's slowly changing in recent years. But in Japan, anime is gigantic. It's part of the culture of the country. There is no constraint here. Anything, no matter how strange or bloody, can be made, and Japan takes this amazing quality of animation to its full potential in anime. They can be more mature, weirder, and can touch on a variety of themes unconstrained. This allows more creativity and more freedom, and when you combine this with Japanese culture, you get some incredibly unique anime. JRPGs take this from anime and insert it into the genre, from the limitless potential it has to its tropes and mannerisms. This always managed to make the games so distinctive from their Western counterparts. JRPGs feel so much more diverse and creative stylistically. The games always manage to be amazing adventures in wondrous worlds while feeling unapologetically Japanese, with bright and colorful characters and anime-esque art styles. This has always put JRPGs above Western ones for me. Western RPGs tend to be more realistic, dark, dreary, and more serious. As such, they can only go so far in providing a varied experience. They usually sacrifice color and expressiveness in order to be this way. Usually the worlds operate in a more limited, more realistic, defined way, because they are focused on taking real-life mechanics into consideration. Western RPG settings typically consist of medieval high fantasy, Lord of the Rings basically, and sci-fi, spacefaring, cyberpunk, post-apocalyptic. There's no such constraint in JRPGs. They can be about anything you can possibly imagine. The worlds feel well realized yet endless. JRPGs don't get enough credit for this. They are incredibly diverse in all aspects, from the style to their mechanics. They'll take you just about anywhere, including anywhere that Western RPGs have gone. Even when they're set in normal medieval settings, they manage to stimulate your imagination, featuring giant birds as transportation and airships. Final Fantasy VI is set in a Victorian-era steampunk-style world. Suikoden is heavily influenced by Chinese mythology. Final Fantasy VII is set in a cyberpunk world controlled by big companies. Parasite Eve is set in New York. Ni no Kuni takes you into the world of Ghibli movies. Kingdom Hearts takes you into a variety of Disney worlds. Earthbound is set in the modern-day suburbia. Valkyrie Profile is set in Midgard and Asgard from Norse mythology. Wild Arms takes you into the Wild West. Persona 4 takes place in a small town in rural Japan. Even the Mega Man RPG series takes you into an anime-esque internet-based futuristic setting where you battle on the internet using online avatars. And a world where little kids capture wild and potentially endlessly powerful creatures to do battle with. JRPGs tend to create their own rules from top to bottom, sometimes using realism to enhance immersion, but rarely leaning on it too heavily. And within these settings, the visual and contextual variety can be staggering, with the only limit being the imagination. JRPG stories also benefit from the creativity and variety their scenarios afford them. Yes, there is a lot of generic stories, but even these benefit from the art style and the setting. Even though some stories might not be the greatest, the immersion factor still remains when the characters in the world are handled so well. Nevertheless, some RPG stories are of the utmost quality, whether because of the quality of the storytelling or because of the thought-provoking nature of the plots. Some JRPGs stand as the best examples of narratives in gaming. JRPGs tend to be more about transporting the player to a different world, where he can exist, interact, and affect. It's not about how confusing and stuffed the story might be, something some RPGs tend to forget. It's always about immersing you in a new world, different from our own, and giving you the feeling of being in a grand adventure with companions that you care about, in beautiful and well-realized worlds. The variety of themes helps a lot here, from war epics like Suikoden 2 to theological and thought-provoking juggernauts like Xenogears. There's no shortage of amazing journeys. Despite there being super serious JRPGs, I love that a lot of games end up being less serious, applying comedy and levity in a lot of parts. Even in really serious scenes, there's a lot of silliness. Take the part where you defeat the dragon tank after escaping from the prison. The enemies hanging out of the edge link you together to form a human bridge. Great RPGs are seldom a one-person show, with games from across the genre almost always bringing in multiple characters to assist the player on their quest. Especially since in a lot of JRPGs the protagonist is silent and the rest of the cast has to carry the game. It's a key feature of the entire spectrum, from the most esoteric JRPGs to the most mainstream ones. Usually we pick up a motley band of waifs and strays along the way, forming memorable bonds with each of these bundles of polygons as we fight our way to whichever villain is threatening the world this time. Coming from anime, we get a lot of tropes, no doubt, but here we're given the time to get to know the characters and see different sides to them. Characters that have very distinctive personalities and designs, being as colorful and expressive as the worlds themselves. I always love the design for a lot of characters too, as they try to convey as much as possible just by their looks. This has led to fantastic and iconic characters that feel just as unique as the games themselves. Gameplay is probably the most controversial aspect of JRPGs. Critics of JRPGs like to bring up this point as a way to disparage the genre, often noticing that JRPG combat is always the same, that it's boring and stale. It's easy to generalize and sweep the entire genre under the absolute rug because you think that every JRPG is filled with the same turn-based combat system. Of course this isn't true, and while I can't help but love a good Dragon Quest style romp every once in a while, JRPG battles come in many shapes and sizes. The range of different and varied gameplay in JRPGs is almost as vast as the settings themselves. The range of different and varied gameplay in JRPGs is almost as vast as the settings themselves. The world ends with you as a creative and different battle system. Vagrant Story is action-based with a focus on precision. Final Fantasy Tactics with a strategy-based combat. Legend of Mana and its real-time action-based combat. Xenogears with its fighting game style, or Chrono Trigger with a creative variant on turn-based combat, and a lot more. Gameplay in JRPGs is incredibly varied, and all you need to do is look in the right places. JRPGs have been able to do some really amazing things with music. It's come to the point where full-on orchestras have been able to put on concerts based on some of the best tracks in JRPGs. With so much amazing music capturing the hearts of gamers, it's easy to take for granted what is often heard the most: world and town music. At worst, a game's world music can be annoying or non-existent to where the player turns it off or tunes it out. However, some games go beyond the intense moments and the specific instances to make meaningful world music that amplifies the experience of the travels between set pieces. You're glad to get back into the track or feel uplifted or calmed by the music of a certain city or village. So, to cap off this video, I want to talk about the most crucial aspect: the first hours. The first hours of a game are the most important part of any video game, but in RPGs even more. RPGs are usually very lengthy, ranging from 20 to 60 or more hours. Because of this, they tend to start very slowly. The first hours become crucial in making sure the player gets invested enough to not want to leave until the game is done, because it's going to be a long journey. If you look at the best JRPGs, you will notice all of them have great starts. Some like Final Fantasy VI grab you in the very first minutes with a beautiful classic montage in the midst of snow. Others like Dragon Quest V take longer, immersing you in this world by slowly revealing the world through your relationship with characters and crafting meaningful relations that you will be invested throughout the game. Final Fantasy VII gives you a memorable and intriguing first hours by slowly showing you the world, giving you tidbits of what's possible through the attack at the Maker Reactor. I've recently played Tales of Berseria, and despite liking the game later on and thinking it's an improvement on the weaker Tales of Destiria, it has a horrible first hours, like truly abysmal. In these first hours, almost nothing is developed. The main character is barely developed at all. All we know is she really likes her brother, but we barely get meaningful interaction between them to better understand the relationship. It's set in a really small area with part of a village and a forest area. Both of these areas are incredibly linear and there's nothing to do and barely anything to see or explore. You don't meet any interesting characters and the main character is not developed at all. You barely discover anything about the world the game is set in, and no effort is made to at least tease you with what the world might offer. All it is a gimmick to put the character in jail in the next scene. That's all, and that's a damn shame because the game does get better after that, but the start is so bad that the player might already have dropped the game by then. With the rise of Western RPGs, JRPGs have taken a step back in the last few years, having forgotten what had captured the imagination of players in the past years.
Something happened along the way where they just lost sight of, I think that they lost confidence in who they were and what they were doing. I really think that that's like what happened. I think they were looking at the West.
The magic seemed to have been lost, some focusing way too much in graphical fidelity or thinking that multiplayer is the future of the genre. JRPGs have been in a weird place in recent years, having a hard time translating to the recent innovations in games. I'm glad to see that in recent years it seems JRPGs might be headed in the right direction again, with games like Persona 5, Ni no Kuni, Final Fantasy 15, I Am Setsuna, and new Dragon Quest, finally. JRPGs have changed. They're not what they used to be, and that's disappointing. Something that JRPGs are definitely missing nowadays is the weirdness and the variety of worlds created. And JRPGs used to be so different than anything else in gaming that it feels like they're losing some of their identity. It's very telling when the biggest and most influential franchises, Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, have for the most part either been dormant or in its worst years. But it gives me hope that recently the genre seems to be moving in the right direction again. Let's hope the genre can get back and continue to provide us with truly magical experiences.
The beauty of role-playing games is that it doesn't really tell you what to do. At least the good ones don't. And that's why that genre is so special, and I think that's why you see so much of role-playing games in every other game now.